Hello and welcome back to the Scottish Curling Podcast, where we chat with the people who make our sport what it is, from grassroots clubs to Olympic champions. I'm Peter Joyce, Digital Lead at Scottish Curling, and as always I'm joined by our CEO, Vincent Bryson. Together we're exploring the stories, the moments and the personalities that shape curling here in Scotland and beyond. Today we're joined by a true legend of the sport, Rhona Howie. Rhona famously skipped Team GB to Olympic gold at the 2002 Winter Games in Salt Lake City, a moment that put curling firmly on the map and inspired countless people across Scotland to take up the sport. We'll be chatting about that unforgettable achievement, her journey through curling, and her thoughts on how the game continues to evolve today. So let's get into it. Here's our conversation with Olympic champion Rhona Howie.
Welcome, Rhona Howie. Our pleasure to have you on the Scottish Curling Podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
So, just before we talk about your curling journey from when you were young all the way through to Olympic success and beyond, you've got a very different role now. You work for World Curling, but you actually enable every single curling competition that World Curling delivers. Tell us a little bit more about that.
That makes it sound quite grand. So obviously we've got many events throughout the year for World Curling, and my role is to make sure we have the right equipment at every event that we require, which is challenging in these days with Brexit and the new customs rules crossing borders. It makes life quite challenging. But so I need to get either broadcasting equipment, stones, ice making equipment, whatever umpires need. So everything basically to make an event run, I need to get it there.
And so, where's next? Because this year's quite an unusual year. There's an extra event in that you were telling us about up the stairs.
Yeah, so with it being an Olympic season, we have 3 weeks of an Olympic qualification event thrown in. So it makes the season very busy and more challenging to fit everything in.
So a 3-week holiday to Canada, is that what you said to me?
I don't think I said the word holiday.
Right, well, good stuff and good luck with that, of course. We'll be watching, and you helped us at Scottish Curling deliver the World Wheelchairs earlier this year, which was helpfully just down the coast, but the preparation, the delivery and everything you did for us there made it a world-class event, so we're really grateful for that. So it's my chance to publicly say thank you to Rhona Howie. So, how were you introduced to curling? What was your early doors?
I was a very late starter. I was leaving school and wanted something to do at weekends. Because at school you played the usual badminton, hockey, but things that I wouldn't have carried on after school. So my brother won the Scottish Juniors and he went to the Worlds in Canada, and thought, this looks like quite good fun. I wasn't allowed to go to the Worlds because I had exams, but Mum and Dad went, and great fun and great parties and the usual with curling. So I thought, this is quite good. And my brother said, you should give it a go. And I came up to Greenacres to the juniors, and I hated it. It was so cold. I kept falling over. I'm like, why am I sliding on this piece of Teflon? My brother said I was like Bambi on ice. So I was like, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I should take up golf. But then I did persevere. I actually had a team that Mum used to host. Lorna Muirhead used to play in the juniors. She was very successful. She was staying with us, and she persuaded me to come back up as well. So my brother brought me back up. And then, yes, the rest is history.
So, if you look back then, biggest influences, you mentioned family, brother, parents and stuff. Were they your biggest influences or mentors, or was it when you got involved in that team with Lorna?
Yeah, I think, I'm the youngest of 5 and I've got 4 brothers. So they all played golf and all rugby, all these kind of sports. So I suppose wanted to do something different. And curling was completely different. I think for me, it was what I really enjoyed about the sport straight away was the fact that it was every game you play is different. You never know what you're going to face. Like if you're running a race, you start at the start and finish at the end and do the same. Yeah. Whereas every time you played, you'd face different situations. I loved the whole tactical side of the game, and I would come up here to juniors and then stay for another few hours and just play about on ice, looking at angles and different things. So I think that side of it really intrigued me. And that's what drew me to the sport. And I think early on, I was 17, and all of a sudden you're travelling around Scotland, going to all these different rinks, playing different people, meeting different people, and it was a great social sport. And that's exactly why I joined the sport, to have a weekend hobby. It wasn't an Olympic medal sport at that point, so I can never say, oh, that was my dream.
Aye. So you're 17, you're beginning to travel. What's, as we, in 2025, we still have to do all the right things about ensuring women in curling and women in sport have the opportunities to represent on an equal basis, and everybody has an equal opportunity. What was it like? What was the beginnings of female representation in curling like when you were 17 and going around the country?
See, it was never an issue back then, because we played in the juniors, the boys and girls all played together. So it wasn't like that's the girls and that's the boys and, they don't mix. No, we all played together and everybody respected each other. So it wasn't a case of, oh, well, you're not as strong a sweeper or you're not as good a player because you're female, or there was never any of that. It was always very much, everybody was treated the same, which is something I really liked. Especially, I think, coming from a family of all boys, I was used to that kind of mix. Aye. But it was good to play with the men. And yes, they called a slightly different game at that point. And I would say that benefited me by playing with them and against them.
When you were that age, that 17, looking up to kind of 20, 21, when did you start to think that I'm good at this? I could be better at this. I know you said that Olympics wasn't on the scene at the time, but there was always World Championships and World Juniors. Did that cross your mind at the time? Say, right, I'm going to go for that, or?
No, I think you just went with the flow and played in events and you were desperate to win.
Aye.
Obviously, Scottish titles are very nice, but I think, we didn't have under 17s or under 14s. We just had under 21s. That was it back in the day. So, when we won the Scottish Juniors to go to Worlds, at that point, it was very much the unknown. What's it going to be like out here in the world stage? Because I think, at that stage we had played in an odd competition abroad in Sweden, or if we were lucky, we got to Canada. So we didn't really know what the world scene looked like. So when you got to World Juniors, you thought, we're actually quite good at this in Scotland. So I think that was the awakening for me that, actually this could go somewhere. So I think it gave you the motivation, because obviously then after I come back from World Juniors, I was out of juniors. So you're straight into women's, and that's when I think it kind of hit me that, right, I want to do this.
Is the intensity of a world, does that give you the drive to then move on and start to chase a bigger dream and a bigger future for yourself? Does it feel different than playing in Scotland as you've done for so long?
Yeah, absolutely, because you're playing all these big nations that were in the game at that time, and when you look back now, we were lucky that we got an odd trip to Sweden or Canada, whereas then when you got into the ladies' game, when you saw the standard in the world, you could keep up with these countries and, you're beating them now and again. So it's like, right, if we work hard at this, we can be better than them. And, it's that realisation that, well, you have to win your national title to be able to get to these ones abroad. But I think, for me, it was definitely the drive of, I really enjoyed skipping and calling the game. And as I say, every game's different you play. So you're faced with a different challenge every time. So you're always learning. And I think that's the key for me, that every loss was a learning experience. And I've always said you have to become a winner, you have to be a good loser. And for me, learning all that, I don't know how many times I was runner-up in the Scottish Championship, I lost count. But, I think it's being able to learn from these mistakes and how to drive forward, and how you as an individual and you as a team can actually work together. And that's the exciting part, because every team you play in is different, because 4 different individuals are always different and have different drives.
Is it safe to say, though, that 1998 was a real turning point for you and your confidence?
I suppose, yes. As soon as you get Scotland on your back and you're representing your country, that's what sends the chills up your spine. That's, when you're standing on the ice and their national anthem's playing, that's what you want to strive for. That's the feeling that you love in sport, as well as the competitive edge.
So we've talked a lot there. In '98, it's a big moment. European Championship, silver medal. What are you balancing at home then? Because obviously you're not full-time professional. What's home life like in 1998 when your sporting achievements are really pushing towards the summit?
Yeah, that's quite challenging. Let's just say I had to be quite organised. So my two kids were very young at that point, and I was known for having my itineraries on the fridge of what they were doing every day. And, as long as the kids were happy in their routine, then I was happy to be away. And they were young enough to not, as long as I say, they could do what they wanted to do, they were happy. And as long as they got a present when I came home, then they were more than happy. So, yeah, it was a big juggling act, and it was hard because you're working, you're looking after your kids, you're doing everything, you're trying to train. And we became part of the Scottish Institute of Sport in 1998. So that's when it really hit home, that psychology, because we were like, when they said psychology, we were like, really? Oh, we don't want people looking into, they might lock us up if they, it was a bit scary. But then, once you realised all, the fitness side of it, the psychology, the nutrition, if we embrace all of that and it gives us a 1% increase in our performance, then we're willing to do anything. So that coming in '98 was a big turning point in the sport.
So 98, obviously we're narrowing that timeline towards a big moment a few years later, but the few years in between are obviously critical because you've now got to build, because national lotteries in play, there's potentially a little bit more investment in play. Can you tell us a little bit, how did your team, Deborah Knox, Fiona McDonald, Janice Rankin, Margaret Morton, how did that group come together? Was that you picking up the phone? Because Eve was telling us she used to just go around and have to pick up the phone. And were you doing the same things, or were other people saying, we think you guys should come together as a unit, we think there's a good team there? How did it happen?
No, for that stage, it was me that basically picked up the phone and phoned people. So when we went to the Worlds in 2000, Debbie Knox, she had won the Worlds, Scottish year before and been at the Worlds, and she came as our fifth player. So after the Worlds, it was a case of, well, qualifying for the next Olympics, it's over a 3-year period. So how you perform at Europeans and Worlds. So that's trying to give the most consistent team. So it was who got the most points in that period. So we knew what we had to do, and basically sat down with the guys and said, look, this is the goal. This is where we want to go. And are we all on board? It's going to take a lot of work, but this is what we want to do. So, yeah, that's how it kind of really came about. So it was me that chose the team.
Right. Awesome.
Yeah.
So that's but that's singular belief, because it's never easy to articulate the long-term vision because it can scare people. But every step in between is usually fraught with something else. Were there moments whereby you had to get the group together and say, we've just got to keep on ploughing on? Or were there moments where you almost kind of said, right, this might not be for us because of a particular event? Did you have that long-term bit in mind? Or was it every journey, as usual, is fraught with?
Yeah, those few years were definitely fraught at times, there's no question. And, I'm asking these people to play with me. Aye. I had to then believe that as a skip, I could call the game and lead the game and play these last shots. They had to have belief in me as much as I had belief in them. And it was that journey. It was a good journey. Yes, there was fraught times, but I think the biggest thing for us was the European Championships before Salt Lake City in 2001. Because the team that were going to the Olympics went to European Championships, and we lost so many games in an extra end. And we were like, oh, what's going on here? And it was that reality moment of, right, we need to do something here. And it was the harsh, close the door, right, let's talk about this. And it was never nice. It's never nice to have these courageous conversations with your teammates, but it had to be done. And it was done, and we came out a stronger team and came out fighting.
Yeah. So the behind the scenes, the coaching team at the time, am I right? Mike Hay was performance director. Who was the team coach at the time?
So my team coach was Russell Keeler. He'd worked with me for quite a while.
Aye.
So obviously we just were able to use him as well. So in the build up to the Olympics, he was our coach.
And you've mentioned before psychology being key, but introduction of video analysis also key as well.
That was massive for us.
Tell us a little bit about that, will you?
Yeah, probably me more than anybody in the team realised how bad I was on the ice when you see it on a video. No, I think it was great not only for normally you're moving salt and pepper around a table when you're talking about situations in the head, whereas the video analysis, there it is. You know, you call up that end, that shot, this is a situation, why did you do that? Why did you think about that? So I think that side of it was brilliant for us to have these discussions, but also body language. You know, I admit I got really grumpy on the ice when things didn't work. And I had to learn how to bin that and understand that what the way I was behaving was affecting my team's performance. So obviously I'm trying to get the best out of my team. So I don't want them to feel that way. So I had to work hard at that side of it and not show the frustration on the ice. And yeah, so things like that. You know, we came into it, as I say, so quickly. All these support services were just at us at once. It wasn't a gradual through your curling career. It was just like, boom, here we go. So it was embracing it and learning how to use these tools. So it was all a huge part of our success. There's no question.
Rhona, where did you find the drive at that point to, if you're talking about watching videos back for hours on end, and you know you're also having to work and you've got your family at home, where do you find that drive within? Do you think that was always in you, or was it that having the Olympics on the horizon and something you could really chase that gave you that?
Yeah, I think because I had come through when it wasn't Olympic sport, and then this reality hit that actually we are quite good at this sport in Scotland, and seeing where you are on the world stage, and then when it did become an Olympic medal sport, right, that's what I want. As soon as that came in, it was like, that's what I want to go for. And I was driven to get to that point, because in 98, in Nagano, we lost on the last end to Kirsty Hay to go to Nagano. And it was after that point, that's when I got the team together and said, right, okay, this is my goal for the next 4 years. Do you want to come on this journey with me? And, you know, I think that competitiveness has always been in me. I say back to growing up with 4 brothers, probably. But I suppose it got greater the more I played. The more you want to win, that hunger is there.
What does that conversation look like, that first, when you're sort of talking to the team at first, 4 years out? How do you not, as a non-professional athlete, I'd be terrified if somebody said to me, in 4 years' time, we're going for the Olympics, and it's all eyes on that and nothing else, we're thinking of nothing else. How do you have that conversation without sort of overwhelming the other players in that team?
They had all been curling for many years and had been successful, so you know, they had that hunger too, but it was a reality check. Okay, this is what it's going to take, because we're not doing it half-heartedly. So we are going to have to take charge of how we train, how we, you know, there was no programs as such at that point. Mike Hay was the performance director, and he would have odd camps, but the rest was up to you more then. So it was had to be driven by us. So the conversations were harsh, but they were realistic. And it's like, you know, we were all had different situations in our life at that point. So 2 of us had kids, 2 didn't. So, you know, that's a big consideration. You know, you're going to be away from home a lot. So, but it's 4 years. Mm-hmm. So in those 4 years, this is what we're going to have to do. Map it all out. You have to compete abroad. You have to do this. You have to do that. You have to train. But we did it in a way where we could train at our own ice rinks, because we're all around for 4 hours apart in the country. So we would have times we got together, and there would be times we train on our own. So we all had to buy into that. And if somebody didn't want to do that, they could have walked away at that point and said, no, do you know, this isn't really for me. I can't commit that time. Then absolutely fine. But we laid it on the table at the very start. And that's what everybody bought into.
So tell us a little bit about selection for the Olympics? Because we know selection's a big topic in curling, and how you get to go somewhere is something that takes a lot of airtime and a lot of minutes when it happens. What's the experience like for you back then?
Yeah, for Salt Lake, we knew in advance that it was over these 3 years, the 3 seasons. So we knew we had done fairly well, but there was another team who went to the Worlds in 2001, and if they had come back, if they'd got to the final, then they would have challenged us with a playoff. They didn't, so we knew at that point we were going. So we had a year knowing we were going to the Olympics. And again, this was the team that I put together. So we were just us. And at that point, we sat down again and reassessed our goals. Right, we know we're now going to Olympics. We've reached our first goal of qualifying. Next goal, we're going to Olympics. How are we going to train? How are we going to work this for the next year? Because we don't want to go and hold up the rest of the countries. We want to be going and being on the podium. So again, reassess goals, right? This is what we now know we're going, so we've got a year. It's a year out of our lives. Let's give this 110%.
And so we're sitting here in Greenacres Ice Rink. There's a pretty impressive flag up the stairs on the side of the rink that I'm going to tell everybody you brought back from Salt Lake
No,
City.
Richard brought it. It wasn't me.
But if you're listening to this and you haven't been to Greenacres yet, please do come down, have a cup of tea, and have a look at the some of the memorabilia that's on the walls. It's quite spectacular. But when we mention Salt Lake to you, when we mention the Olympics, just kind of snapshot, what's that first image or feeling that comes to mind?
It was just such a massive experience to be there. And it was really tough because it was just after 9/11, and we had to make changes there because of the extra security, and the Olympic Village was an hour away.
Yeah.
And then with the extra security, it was going to take an hour and a half to 2 hours to get in and out every day. And with curling, you're there every day.
Yeah.
So we made that decision to stay in a hotel locally. And that was probably one of the best decisions, to save that travelling in and out every day. So, yeah, we did a recce, and, we made the right decisions for us at the time. And then the Olympics, it was a marathon. You've got 9 round robin games. Then we decided to have 2 playoff games. So, that was our only day off. So we decided we wanted to keep curling. And then semis and final. And you're in that bubble when you're there, and all you're focused on is performance. There wasn't the social media back then. We weren't drawn into any hype of anything. It was exciting. Princess Anne sitting watching us. Oh, my goodness, this is exciting. But, the whole time we were really happy that it was raising the profile back home, because at the time we didn't really know what was happening back home, which is probably a good thing. And there were messages coming in from very influential people when we got to the final, but Russell told us nothing. We just did what we were doing and got on with it, and I think that was it. We're there to do a job, and we were so focused on doing that. And when we got that second chance through the playoff, we're like, we're not going to blow this.
Yeah, there's some fairly famous footage and moments there where I think you and the team thought that the chance had gone, but you were reliant on, I don't know, snookers or other results going your way. But that's elite sport, isn't it?
Well, it is, and it was ironic. We needed Switzerland to win, and that's who we ended up playing in the final.
Yeah.
And for us, Canada's such a big curling nation, and growing up, that was always who you were really riled to play. And when we played them in the semi-final, I'll never forget, we did an interview, both of us, the skips together, with a Canadian channel, and, they said, what happened? And she said, I can't believe we lost to them. That's all she said, and because that cost them a lot of money. And that's all they were thinking about. Whereas to us, we were like, oh, we're in the final. This is great. So, yeah, I think the Olympics was tough. It was mentally really draining because we had these extra playoffs, and it was just, right, one more game. And then it was a bit of relief at the end of that final. That's it, we're done.
But you go back to those 4 years, back in 98 or run about then with that European medal, when you're selecting the team, when you're phoning everybody up, the high and the low that you feel at the same time, of you kind of breathe a sigh of relief when you finally won it. But is everything worth it?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Because and people call it sacrifices. It's not sacrifices, it's choices you make. And, you know, it's not forevermore. It was for that spell of a 4-year period. So, yeah, those choices we made at that time were 100% worth it.
So we go to that final end in the O2 final. So, really basic question. We're just dying to know what's going through your mind. Are you thinking about you've left the itinerary on the fridge for the kids? You know, you're so process driven. You've got the routine there. You're like, have I left everything there for all the kids to get their dinner and make sure they go through a routine? Or are you thinking, no?
No, it was really a case of we had last stone, we had that control in the last end. And, you know, before the end started, it was the team knew what I was going to say. You know, just you keep it open, I'll make this last shot. And of course they did. They did peel the guards well and did leave it open. And then I was like, oh, right, it is up to me now. So, yeah, the team played a perfect end. You know, the Swiss played a great shot that we had to beat. And, yeah.
So I remember seeing a couple of the pretty impressive documentaries and stuff that we made about you, the team, and obviously the amazing medal. You used a phrase in one of them that said you were a bit surprised that the Swiss didn't really want to take you on.
Yeah.
Was the game a lot cagier than you'd been thinking? Had you been prepping for this is going to be a battle? And it turned into something else?
I think because we had last on and had that control, we didn't need to really push at that point, and they just didn't. They were quite happy to play a very clean, open game. So to me, that was them thinking they were just waiting for a miss from us to try and capitalise. But yeah, I was surprised they didn't take it on. But it was a final, and maybe, you know, that was their tactics they came in with. So I certainly didn't need to do anything different because they weren't taking me on. So, okay, fine, we'll get the last end with a hammer. That's all I want.
Yeah. So the phrase of the Stone of Destiny has obviously been effectively labelled onto that shot in your experience. What does it mean to you today to hear kind of those 4 words?
Yeah, I think just as a wee curler from Greenacres, you know, we were playing a sport we loved to play, and nobody could prepare you for the consequences of being an Olympic champion. And I think looking back, the main thing for me is it helped raise the profile of the sport because so many people were watching, which we didn't know about. You know, we came home and it was crazy. You know, and I remember back then, you would maybe get a few lines in the Glasgow Herald about curling your results or whatever. And I remember phoning home and saying, oh, did we get anything in the Glasgow Herald? And they said, you're on the front page of every paper. And I was like, really? So, you know, we were so unaware of what was going on here. But for us, raising the profile of the sport, not just to the general public, but actually to funding partners and other people that are involved in sport, you know, that us winning was a great benefit for the sport going forward because, you know, then all of a sudden you've got full-time athletes. And not that I'm saying we helped do that, but it certainly raised the profile. And for us, that was massive. Because at the time, there was an awful lot of jokes, curling your hair and sweeping floors. Yeah. And you would just laugh about it. But then after we won, people were a bit more serious, which that pleased me.
When you've been that driven for that long, are you able to celebrate that night? Or is it relief?
Yeah, we did go out in Salt Lake because we had to drive an hour to the Meadow Plaza. But it was funny, even that was such a funny experience because when we did the recce, they had shown us this car park in the middle of Salt Lake. And because we weren't down at the village, we didn't see all this. So they'd shown us this and said, that'll be the Meadow Plaza. So you picture that car park you're driving to. And then we went in and there was like 30,000 people in this Meadow Plaza. And it was like, wow, what have we done? And I think at that point, the media were just all over us after the presentation of the medals. And it was just like, we've done something here because we don't normally get that, you know, publicity. So that night we did stay in Salt Lake for an hour or two, had a few drinks to celebrate, and then went back to our hotel because the men's final was the next day. So we were just back at the hotel.
How quickly once you come home do you realise that everything has changed and life's probably never going to be as it was before?
I think as soon as we landed at the airport, we got to London and we had to go on Richard and Judy live. And we were like, oh my goodness. What do they know about curling? But so that was in London before we even got to Glasgow. And then we got to Glasgow. When you win a medal at a championship, when you walk back through the airport with your medal, it's dead exciting. We weren't even allowed to walk through the airport. We were taken the runway right through to a hotel, and Jackie Bird was standing there. And I was like, that's Jackie Bird. It's like, oh my goodness. And, even that, it was like, oh wow. And all these people were there to meet us, and it was, oh, this is quite big. And then we were whisked here for a party at Greenacres. So it was just like a whirlwind of things happening. And then I got back to Dunlop, and there was banners up and posters, and all the shops were done up, and it's like, what is going on? So yeah, it was a special time coming home, but I think the reality hit the next few days when media are phoning, and you're like, oh my goodness, like, are we going to go back to normal? I'm back home, kids are like, what's for tea? Where's my brownie uniform? All these kind of things that you just get straight back down to earth with a bump.
Was there a moment that you thought, this is too weird? Was there somebody you met, or a moment that you just thought, how is this happening? What's going on here?
Yeah, there was, even it was at the Olympics, because I've followed Steve Redgrave for years. He's my hero. And he came up to me at the Olympics and gave me a cuddle and was like, that was amazing, well done. And I was like, oh my goodness, he knows my name. So things like that, you just think as a curler, you're not used to being in that environment of celebrities. So, I just think everything that happened, like afterwards, and then being asked to go on Ready, Steady, Cook and Question of Sport and all these things, you're like, oh Lord, I don't know all these things.
So I'm a celebrity, get me out of here, is that?
No. Definitely not. That's when I would put my foot down.
I think the lineup's coming out pretty soon. So.
It's fine. I'm not going to Australia.
Well, I think we're all disappointed to hear that. So O2 is obviously, a singular moment in an amazing career, and we're interested to understand kind of what comes next. As with so many things, sometimes teams break up, sometimes they stay together, but give us a handle or a little bit of understanding into that 4-year block pre-O2 comes to a medal. There's a block post-O2 that leads up to 06. What does that begin to look like? Because did you have as much effectively control or say in all that stuff around team prep and all that kind of thing?
No, not at all. So we started playing after 2002 with a team because certain members of the team decided to stop playing, so kind of get a new team together. But then it was announced that they were going to run a squad system for the next Olympics. After our success, UK Sport came in with a lot of funding for the sport, which was great. And because at that time we were the only UK sport funded in Scotland, like by UK Sport, so everybody else was down south. So it was great, but the squad system was a new way of thinking, especially for the coaches. How do you run the squad system? How best do you get the best out of each player? And it was challenging, there's no doubt, because there's always that doubt in your mind. I think before, when you were playing as your team and you were controlling it, you knew what you were striving for, whereas you never really knew exactly what the coaches were looking for. Aye. You had to do your best, but you're an individual, whereas you've spent all that time building up that team dynamic. So then all of a sudden you're playing with different teams all the time. So that's tough, especially, you're trying to read everybody's deliveries, everybody's different. So, there was a squad system up to 2006, and they only announced the team after the Europeans prior to the Olympics.
So late 2005.
Yeah. So it was in the January, that the Europeans was in the December, and it was in the January they announced the team. And, I think they probably looked at other sports where you pick the best players and you make a team. Yeah, that can work, absolutely. But they picked the best players at that time, they said, but they didn't give those players long enough to get to know each other. For years you've been rivals, and all of a sudden you're on the same team. So you have to get that dynamic working. So good players can play together, but that team dynamic's a huge part of our sport.
Do you think, is it crass to say that 2006 was a missed opportunity?
I think it was disappointing after our success in 2002 that we didn't give Great Britain the best chance to medal, because I had no issue with them changing the way they selected the team. I just wish they'd selected them sooner,
Right.
to give the players a chance to work together.
And is it a vagary of high performance sport? It doesn't matter whether it's curling or hockey or anywhere else, whereby to ascend to the top of the pinnacle, you've got to individualise so much training. And curling is a unique team sport. It's not the same type of team sport as netball or football or basketball. It's a different type of team sport. And that team dynamic theme you've talked about consistently throughout this interview and many times since we've been chatting. So when you finish playing in 06, how much does that stick with you when you begin your transition into coaching, about protecting that team dynamic?
Hugely.
Yeah.
Definitely, because when I then moved into coaching, that was a big part that I really tried to push onto the teams I was with, about how much. And for me, 4 people in a team, everybody's so different, and different things make people tick, and different people have different needs, and you need to speak to people differently. You need to, all your training is centred around each individual, but then that team dynamic. And that was a huge part of my coaching side of things that I concentrated on.
So just before we jump into the coaching bit, your last competitive game of curling was in 2006 at the Olympics, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. What happened in the last game?
I can't remember. We won our last game, and I remember we had to sit and wait, I think, expecting somebody to lose, but they didn't. So, no, I couldn't even tell you who we played in the last game. That was a long time ago.
Was coaching always that natural next step? Or did you have to think about it?
No, I wanted to give something back to the sport, because I had so many good years from curling that I wanted to give something back. So, I started working with Scottish Curling and helping with Regional Academy and National Academy and setting those up and trying to help the next generation move forward. But then I got given the opportunity to go on the elite coach programme with UK Sport. So it was a 3-year programme. They started this because of London 2012, and they wanted their athletes and teams to have UK coaches. So they wanted to upskill people in the UK. So I was the first winter sport one to be inducted. So that was really exciting. As I say, they were focusing in 2012, but we got in and it was great. You're learning from all these other big sports. So for me, it was a huge eye-opener.
So it's really interesting to hear someone like yourself, Olympic champion, the level that you coached at. You took this opportunity to learn about coaching for 3 years, and obviously it wasn't about stones or sweeping or reading the ice or anything like that. To give us a little bit of understanding what that education was like, because we really want to try and celebrate the value of education and kind of committing to that coaching journey. And if you can do it, hopefully other people can as well.
Yeah, and I think it's learning. A lot of people say, oh, they've been a player, oh, they'll be a good coach. But the skills are completely different. And as I say, you need to get the best out of every player, and you need to know your players and know what makes them tick. So how do you train each of these individuals, but how do you train as a team? But also, I think for me, it's being able to have those courageous conversations with athletes that you have to have all the time in high performance. So it's being able to hold those conversations. So, you do a lot of that, and you do a lot of learning from other sports of examples they've maybe had when they've got difficult situations, or how to train, and just all of that learning was massive for me to know me as a person, because I suppose you walk into coaching and you think, I know best, I know what I'm going to say, I know what they need to do. No, but it's how you deliver it, and how do you get each athlete to actually buy into what you're trying to achieve for them. Because you do get resistance, because athletes like to train and do what they're good at.
Yeah.
They don't like being put out of their comfort zone. So how do you put them out of their comfort zone to make them a better player? And I had a lot of that with teams that I'd worked with, but you have to believe what you're doing is right. And it was really good, because then with this course that I did, they came and observed me coaching on the ice. So it was really good to get that feedback as well. As what's good, what's bad, what should I change. So that was really beneficial.
So it sounds from what you've said, because even since we've been speaking here for the last maybe 40 minutes or so, you've talked a lot about psychology and team dynamic. And would it be wrong for me to say know the team is just as important as know the game? You can't just be good at one to be a coach at the level that you were coaching at.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not just, and I think different teams need different styles of coaching right now. Your elite teams, they don't need a lot of coaching that you need to do with the lower teams, because every team's got a different requirement, whether it's tactics. The younger teams are always learning, so you're constantly looking at tactics, looking at game situations, what would you do differently, and that's where the video analysis is really good. Whereas the top level teams, it's more of a manager with them. So it's knowing your team and knowing what they need from you.
So what lessons did you take from your own experience at Salt Lake or elsewhere into your coaching practice when you were working for UK Sport?
I think it's those leadership roles. You had to lead a team, and at the time I didn't think I was leading a team. I was just the skip and that was it. But it is having these leadership roles, and it's, a lot of companies have asked me, nothing to do with sport, just about how to get that dynamic in a team workforce. You've all got the same goal. So how can you work together? You're never going to like everybody in life. That's just life. So how do you work together and get the best out of each person? And that, to me, was a huge, drive forward of everything in life.
Aye. So taking into account all the things that you've done on and off the ice, all the coaching practice, what would you want young curlers to understand about the game's values and about what it brought to you, the community that you enjoyed when you were, 16, 17? And what bits of that do you want to make sure that young people today understand?
Young people come into sport, they have to have fun. They have to enjoy the sport.
Yeah,
that's why I joined the sport,
yeah.
to have a weekend hobby. I loved it from the word go. I loved meeting people. I loved travelling around. And, to me, nowadays squads and performance is much more instilled from an early age, because you've got under 14s, you've got under 16s. So they're competing at a higher level much quicker than I did. But they've still got to have fun. You still got to enjoy it. And, it's a sport. It's a hobby. It's not, there are athletes that are training full-time and getting paid full-time, but that's a handful. The rest of the people, you just need to enjoy the sport, enjoy the challenges it brings, and enjoy the social side.
How do you see the state of play with curling in Scotland today?
Yeah, we're very successful right now. It's great on the world stage. We're really lucky that we have these role models at the top of the game for our sport, and we need to celebrate that and push that to encourage youngsters. But it is sad that ice rinks are struggling and potentially closing down, and that is sad for me, because I don't want the sport to die off. I want the sport to grow. It's a sport I've been a part of now for many, many years, and it's so close to my heart that I don't want to see it dwindling. So it's finding that, what is the magic answer to get people involved in the sport. We've got these Come and Try days, which are brilliant, and they're so popular here at Greenacres, and it's great. And I love seeing new people coming up and trying the sport and loving it and saying, oh, this is so hard. And it looks so easy on the telly, but it's hard. And, for me, just seeing people coming into the sport, new people, that's what I love.
Yeah, I should say that my tri-curling experience was here. And at the end of it, just before I joined Scottish Curling, you actually served me my tea as well. And but I knew who you were, and you knew who I was, and the job I was about to go and do. But the chap next to me didn't, and he was really, really excited about having had his tri-curling experience. Big, massive shout out to Carol Crawford, by the way, who delivered the session here at Greenacres. Brilliant stuff from Carol. But when I nudged him and I said, "Ever had your tea served to you by an Olympian?" and he went, "What?" I said, "Yeah, 2002 Olympic champion," and he was gobsmacked. I don't think you wouldn't have noticed it, but he was and he was absolutely gobsmacked. And he was like, and he couldn't quite compute it about how humble you were, about how you were chatting with everybody, because the American tour was here as well. It was a really big day. So that was a really, really powerful moment for me personally, to see you.
Well, I did do catering at uni, so that was my degree, but then that involved a lot of weekend work, and I couldn't curl and do that. So I had to put that to the side. So if I can help out here doing anything, it's a bonus.
But to follow on what Peter's just said there, we are in the Olympic year, so we get that spike. Everybody knows it comes, and we are really trying to figure out, exactly as you said there, what is the magic elixir, the silver bullet that grabs people who go through that 2-week intoxication of curling when the Olympics comes on. Because you had that, we were all doing it in '02. I remember it as a young man watching, saying, I hope they win, I hope they win. Do you see opportunities with the worldwide role that you've got? You'll see mixed doubles, you'll see different countries delivering things differently. Level of media exposure and stuff is obviously varies country to country. Canada has got a really big sporting ecosystem for curling. Is there anything you see on your travels that you think, I'd like us to have a crack at that in Scotland?
I think our biggest challenge is the fact it's towards the end of the season.
Yeah.
So ice rinks are closing. So you've only got a very, very small window. Mm-hmm. And I think all these come and try sessions that the ice rinks are doing are brilliant. But I think it's making sure towards the end of the summer that, you're making sure all these people are coming back at the start of the season, because that buzz of the Olympics is away and people move on to new things. So it's how do you keep them involved in curling after they've had that initial shot after the Olympics, because the try curling sessions are great, and it is that follow-up and get these people back and get that excitement going again. That's the thing. The public love it. They love an Olympic Games. It doesn't matter whether it's summer or winter. They all get hooked on it. Yeah. So it is for us to try and capitalise on any chance we get to get people in the door.
Yeah, it's a whole sport thing, that, because the person's got to enjoy the experience, which I did thoroughly when I did mine, and then of course they've got to come back to a place that they feel welcome and part of as well, and that's critical that we support the ice rink to go and deliver that experience, and trying to do that under the, there's a bit of difficulty on the uncertainty around the future of rinks as well. So this is actually going to be a really, really important year for the sport, we think. So this weekend is the indoor grand match, which we're all chuffed about. There's 1,200 plus people taking part across 12 ice rinks. Greenacres is one of them, and that's just a phenomenal community experience. We're really looking forward to that. Are you playing, Rhona?
No, sorry, I'm busy this weekend. No, it is, and that's the whole spirit of curling.
Yeah.
And that's what things like this are just fantastic to watch.
Yeah, and the spirit of curling is something you've exuded for years, and you've been such a help to me on the rare occasions where I've been brave enough to come and ask you for anything. But I know you're very, very busy. So from me, from Peter, from the team at Scottish Curling, Rhona Howie, living legend, and makes a mean cup of tea. Thank you for everything you've done for us, for the sport, and for this interview. We'll see you soon.
Pleasure, thank you.